can remember it quite clearly. I couldn't have been any more than 2 or 3. And I'd jump up on the stage and they'd say, sing a song, Norman. And I'd go, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Ooh, I'm Popeye the Sailor. And I'd sing this bloody thing. And it got huge reaction. And I think, you know, the first time any artist gets up and gets an audience, positive audience reaction, they're done. That's good night. The drug has got them.
Yeah.
One of the things I find really extraordinary looking back is, having created this industry, is that there was a continuity right up until about 1985 of places of exposure for Australian performers. You know, there was the television show. You know, in 1975, there were 61 live music spots a week on national television.
How many?
61.
That many shows?
Absolutely. How many do you think there are today?
For live entertainment?
Yeah.
4?
4. That's what we've allowed to happen. Our industry has been rolled over on its back and kicked in the guts constantly, and we haven't even noticed it happening.
Is it just Australia, do you think, or do you think it's happening worldwide?
I don't give a stuff about anywhere else. I only care about Australia.
But as you said, when you came back from Vietnam, the pop scene had changed a little bit. You then had to create your own new Normie Rowe.
Yeah, but that attitude started when I was 16. You know, I'd been 17. I'd been with the PMG 2 years. That's what Telstra is today. As a telecommunications technician. And as soon as I knew every day I would have to get out of bed and go to work and do stuff. I think that's what we all have to do. So I decided if I was going to be 100% professional, I would have to get out of bed, and I'd make my bed and get out and do stuff. And at the end of every day, even if it was just to go and get a suit fitting, at the end of every day I will have achieved one thing, so that at the end of a year I would have achieved 365 things that were important in my life, in my career. And some of it took the entire 8 or 9 hours, and some of it only took a few. But if I wasn't doing anything, I'd be learning new songs.
Yeah.
You know?
But as you were very busy. You toured with all of that.
That's how you get to be busy though, Wendy. You have to get off your arse and do something. You can't sit around and wait for a manager or for an agent to give you work. You know, you have to create a product that they feel like getting off their backsides and selling.
Okay, so for example then, you moving into theatre, how did that come about? I mean, people even perceiving you as a theatrical performer as opposed to Normie Rowe, the pop star. No, just run it through.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting process.
Yeah, all right. So here's the process. I had become what I called myself at the time. I didn't spread it around or anything, but I just looked at myself and I said, I am a cabaret hack. What I do is I arrive with a case with music in it, perhaps a microphone, a dinner suit or some sort of stage outfit. I give the music out to the band. They play it variously from incompetently to okay. I'm dragging most of the time the show as if it was an elephant through a mangrove swamp, and being reasonably successful at it. What made it helpful was that I was doing 2 Don Lane shows and 4 midday shows every month. That's a hell of a lot.
Kept your profile up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what is needed. And every show that I did, there were 4 or 5 artists also working because I was doing that. Right? It wasn't because I'd had all those hits 5 or 10 years earlier. I was doing that, and I looked at it, and then came Paul Keating's J curve and the recession that we had to have and all that sort of bullshit, and the industry really took a hit. You know, I know that I lost something like $150,000 worth of venues in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. There were venues that I could derive that money over a 12-month period that closed down.
If you love the songs played here on Wrokdown Radio, we've been working on a new idea to help all these bands. We've got a net radio show, and all these songs are now available to you. You can find the links at wrokdown.com or just Google Wrokdown on Toot. Wrokdown, helping our Australian musicians.
Wrokdown.
The mortgage rates were 22%, and we just went, we can't afford this. We had to sell up, and we went to Sydney, and we lived in a one-room apartment with our little girl, and there was every Saturday. Well, the first thing that happened is I signed up for drama lessons at the Ensemble Studios in Sydney.
In Sydney.
Mm. And I went there. It was almost like with chin down and cap in hand, and like a little kid going to school for the very first time. I was so nervous. I was 17 years older than the next oldest person in the place. I was 37. Next oldest was 20. And there were about 40 people there, and I was really well known amongst some of them. And I just said, throw it all away, forget about anything I'd done in the past, I'm going to learn this thing. And the only reason I went there was to try. I'd never seen an actor who was bad at giving interviews. And I thought they had to get that from somewhere, perhaps it's an acting school. So I went to an acting school, and on the way I discovered acting. And I was there with Hayes Gordon and Zika Nesta for 2.5 years, almost completed my course before Hayes said, I've got a part in a play at the Ensemble Theatre, which is a professional theatre, and we want you to play the part of Vinnie Gray, a fading rock star. And I said, oh, cast a type. and I played that play, and out of that came nearly 2 years in Sons and Daughters, and out of that, the day that finished, that Sons and Daughters actually finished itself, so I played in that until the end of it, was the day it was announced that I got the lead role in Les Mis and played 600 performances as Valjean in Les Mis. There was a lady by the name of Maria Pereira who has passed on since, but was a retired opera singer, soprano, and a writer for The Australian. And she had a full-page spread when it was announced that I had the role. She said, Normie Rowe in the balcony-busting role of Jean Valjean in the forthcoming production of Les Miserables. You've got to be joking. And it was a full-page thing, and nobody could have done a better work of
sabotage.
No, well, for me it was completely the opposite, you know, because I cut that out and I pasted it on my mirror, and I read it every single night, and it proved to me how judgmental we are without knowing all the facts, and we all should take a bit of a leaf in walking the other man's shoes.
So, having had that under your belt, you went on to do more musicals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you fill us in?
Yeah, I did. I played Daddy Warbucks in Annie, which I think is a bit of fluff, but Anthony Warlow's playing it to great success
on Broadway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is pretty good. Yeah, it's damn good. And it proves, our talent here in Australia is at least as good, if not better, than any talent in the world. And it doesn't make sense to educate people and train them to such a level and then say, sorry, there's no business you can apply yourself. Because Anthony is not a Robinson Crusoe on this island. There are hundreds of kids who are graduating. There are 5,000 performing artists graduating every year in Australia from tertiary level education. And when you think that education possibly started right back when they were 2 years old learning to sing and dance at the local dance school, that's more education than a brain surgeon. So playing those roles, it gives you an idea of the breadth of even people in the amateur sphere. Just terrific. I did in Sydney. I did Freddie Trumper in Chess, the American, who has a fantastic song called "Pity the Child." Then I did Juan Perón in Evita, and that was a big stretch because I decided that I would really try hard to get a positive Argentinian accent, and we don't really hear them in Australia.
Not much.
So a friend of mine was married to an Argentinian woman, and I said, can I come around and chat to you and try and listen to all the little...
Hello.
I can't even do it anymore.
You just did it.
I'm not coming here anymore unless there's plexiglass screens between us. So, those sort of things have been great. I did a play called... or a musical called It Ain't Necessarily Rowe. Yet another one. Story about me. I'm so sick and tired of living my own life twice and 3 times in a row. And of course, most recently has been Normie the Musical, which has been quite a ride.
Yes, can you tell us about that?
Well, that one came about 4 years ago. Peter Sullivan of the two-man band, up there. Sully. Yeah.
Everyone knows Sully.
He and Graham Johnston, Jacko from the Melbourne Sun Herald, decided they would write this story. There were enough incidents in a short period of time to turn it into quite a dynamic show. And the time was between, say, 63 and 72. Which was, the rise and fall of Normie Rowe and into England. And
a lot happened in that period.
A huge amount of happened.
Yeah.
But also, in parallel to his life, there was all this immense stuff going on politically and socially in Australia as well. Of course, there was the sexual revolution was taking place at that time. Which perhaps wasn't really visited all that much in the musical, but I think in further rewrites we might approach that because I think it's fair. You've got to look at things like, the pill and the loosening up of language in Australia. I mean, hitherto for 4-letter expletives to be heard in polite company would never be accepted. And yet when I went to London, everybody, male and female, upper class, especially the upper class people, they were still into, and still are today, into this class separation. And so that was really the beginning of what we see today, where it seems to be just total open slather, and at 7 o'clock at night you can say anything you like.
Yeah.
And on the project, of course, they do.
Yeah.
So that was beginning in the 60s. Then, of course, the Vietnam War and all the things associated with that, with the moratoriums and the advent of the arrival of Lyndon Johnson in Australia, you know, all the way with with LBJ,
yeah.
and of course the handing over of the reins from Bob Menzies to Harold Holt, and the subsequent death of Harold Holt, not all that long later. It really threw the entire country into such turmoil politically, and I don't think anybody really knew what the hell or how the hell we had this big thing going on to the north of us in Vietnam, and the government, the government of the day was having all sorts of problems. You know, the previous Prime Minister had left Australia virtually after bringing us into the war. This new guy who really was really a nice guy, and he liked being a nice guy, and he hated the idea of having to sell this war to the general public, because let's face it, that's what politicians are. They're just salesmen. And if they had to work outside of the political sphere, they wouldn't sell anything. Harold Holt was in absolute personal turmoil about this stuff that was going on, apart from the fact that he was quite the ladies' man. He was, as it's said in the play, he was quite an ageing Lothario. And so, all of these things are included in this musical, and almost all of the songs, apart from a couple of the songs that were written specifically by Sully and Graham, are from my recorded repertoire.
Wrokdown.
Welcome back to Wrokdown, my guest, my very special guest, my shy special guest is Mr. Normie Rowe. We're having a good time. We're having a good time. Having a good time. If we start jumping out of our skin, there's it's been a lot of sugar.
I love the way it keeps getting topped up.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful, intimate studio. And,
that's good, isn't it?
And you're because we're all mates. It's such an easy way to
spend the afternoon.
Yeah.
Evening. Could be tomorrow by the time we get out of here. So anyway, you were giving us a great chat.
So the whole idea of this Normie the Musical really is to prove a process that I've had sitting back, and I've tried to explain it to other people, and I've realised in the later parts of my life that if I've got a concept on something, there's no point in handing it over to somebody. They won't have the sort of passion that I have.
That you do, yeah, of course.
So my passion is not Normie the Musical so much as the process of proving it, so we can then do what Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice and all those sort of people have done from England and sold their products right across the world.
Yeah.
And made themselves lords and billionaires and everything like that. Why shouldn't that?
Why can't it come from here?
Australia, exactly. And we have the perfect proving ground here.
Well, as you said, it's proof. We have the talent in all fields.
It's all the way. I saw the musical movie The Sapphires 2 days ago, and it's fantastic. There isn't anything in it that you wouldn't have in. Red Dog, the script for Red Dog, fantastic. We are making very good movies in our script writing thing. I don't know if you've seen any episodes of The Rake, but my God, the script writing is terrific.
Fantastic.
We've known we've had the actors, so that's in that section. We know we've got the great rock and roll artists.
But what do we need then?
Well, what we need, really, I suppose what we need is somebody who no, we don't need money, but we do need the process of saying to the general public, here is this stuff, but we don't have that. So I think what we really need to do, as under siege as free-to-air television seems to be, and cable, we still have the right, our federal government has the right to regulate it. And we must regulate these organisations to have variety on television and live rock and roll stuff, or contemporary music stuff, not necessarily rock and roll. New music, new Australian material on television so that people can see it and say yes or no. If they don't like it, it's okay. But if it's something brilliant and they don't get to see it, that's not fair. It's just not fair.
See, the thing is that basically what you've covered today, theatre, television, and what we were having a good old go on about before was the lack of Australian content on radio as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're saying, it can be regulated.
The content is on radio, but I don't mind. They're still playing my old records of 40 years ago, but that's not...
They're not playing...
They need to be playing young artists or new music by people, and it's not being played. So there are ways of going about it. We've shot ourselves in the foot a little bit by having a bilateral trade agreement with the United States, and it could never be bilateral because the United States is such a big joint and Australia is such a small joint. How can that be bilateral? It actually doesn't do any good for anybody but the miners. The furniture factories are going out of business. The shoe factories are going out of business. The bloody clothing factories have all been... the jobs have been shipped off to China or somewhere else. You know, how can that be any good for anybody but the people who want to sell, turn Australia into the world's mine? And that's it.
Well, we're going to have to get you back for another episode because we're only halfway through everything.
If I'm coming back, I need a soapbox because this chair isn't big enough for me to be able to sprout.
How about a banana instead?
Oh,
I'd like to thank Mr. Normie Rowe.
I'd like to take 3 bananas.
You just are going to be in a lot of trouble when this camera goes off, and say good night to everybody, Norm.
Good night, everybody.
Good night from Wrokdown.